to the 10 Washington Podcast.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Ted Wallison Podcast. Much appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and much appreciate all of you who have taken the time to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free, and if you do that, we would appreciate that. You can drop by our website, www.tedwallison.ca, for past episodes as well. And our thanks, as usual, go to Tom's Place. We'll suit you. They're located at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. For the finest prices in the best selection of men's fashion, I guarantee you, Tom's Place is the place to be. Thanks to Paul Gatt, our executive producer, for all the great work he puts in on each and every podcast. This week, our special guest is a celebrated music journalist. He's also a radio and podcast host and author of 2 books on Beatles legends George Harrison and Ringo Starr. His book, Dark Horse Records, which, by the way, we featured on a previous podcast, is the story of George Harrison's post-Beatles record label titled Dark Horse Records. It, in fact, was selected for preservation into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's Museum, Library, and Archives. That's pretty cool, I think. His latest offer is titled Ringo Starr, Solo Career. You can see it right here. See that? Got to pay your dues. It's a terrific read, fascinating stories. And you know, if there was such a thing as a Nobel Prize for research, this man would be a deserved recipient. Please welcome Aaron Badgley. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm always thrilled to be talking to you. It's always a big thrill to me, and I enjoy it. And I watch your podcast and your shows, so I love watching you and I love talking to you.
Well, thanks very much. The last time we gathered, ladies and gentlemen, Aaron and I were discussing a book titled Dark Horse Records: The Story of George Harrison's Post-Beatles Record Label. Another great book. First of all, if you're a Beatles fan, you're going to love both of these books. Even if you're not a Beatles fan, you're going to love both of these books. But I'm thrilled to realize that your book is now part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Library and Archives. That's cool.
That was a big honor. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's one of the few things I did. I never framed my diplomas from university or whatever, or degrees, but I framed that letter. That's
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it in a frame, but that was a big honor, and I'm really proud of that. I'm so proud, and that gives me access to their archives, so I can actually go to Cleveland and do research in parts of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame where no one else can go, which is extremely cool.
And it also gives you a good reason to go to Cleveland without having to lie and say, well, it's a cousin, I have to go.
Well,
with all due respect to Cleveland, I have family in Cleveland. I love Cleveland. It's a great city.
I go for baseball. I love going to see the Jays play there, and I love the Rock and Roll. Actually, there's an area of Cleveland that has some really good restaurants and really good food there.
A place called the Flats, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been there with it's actually my wife's cousins who are from there. So yeah, enjoyed it very much. But Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I mean, that's such an iconic institution. It's like not everybody gets in there for whatever reasons. Actually, the last interview I did was with David Marsden. You know him from,
of course,
CFNY, The Spirit of Radio. He has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
As he should, the Mars Bar. Yeah.
Both Dave Mickey and David Marsden, same person, are both inducted.
Good.
But let's get back to the Beatles here. But before we start talking Starr, as in Ringo, let's start talking McCartney, but not as in Paul, as in Ruth McCartney, Paul's stepsister. She wrote the foreword. How'd that come about?
So when I did my first book, they invited me on. They have a show called T-Flicks with the McCartneys. And they invited me on to talk about my George Harrison book. And, you know, you start talking to people, Ted, and we've struck up a friendship. And they're lovely people, both Ruth and her mom, Angie. And they had me on a couple of times. And then when I wrote my book, I said to Ruth, would you consider writing the introduction? Because she's written books and her mom's written books. And she said, well, I need to read it before I do an introduction. I said, well, of course. So I sent her the book. Mm-hmm. She was happy with it, and she did it. And then I was on T-Flicks 2 weeks ago, again, talking about it. And I'm going to see them in February when I'm in Los Angeles visiting my daughters. So, now, they're lovely people.
That would be Paul's stepmother, right?
That's right. Yeah, she
Who
married.
is like,
Yeah,
what is she, 97 or something now?
96 and
Wow.
sharp as a tack, man. Like just
Yeah, yeah.
and the funny thing is, I mentioned something in my new book, and she said, "Well, let me tell you where that comes from." She's telling me, I thought, why didn't I interview her? You know, but
Yeah, yeah.
she was lovely. So that's how. So Ruth is a lovely person who just said, "Yeah, I'll do the introduction," and she wrote it, and then my publisher said, "We got to put that on the cover." I'm like, "Whatever, that's fine, whatever you say."
No, that's a great get, as they say in the industry, whoever they are. I've never used that term, but apparently it's been said.
I'm going to ask you for my next book, Ted. So be well.
Who do it on The Circle, who once opened for the Beatles in Maple Leaf Gardens in '64. I saw that show. I think I told you that with the
You
last
did.
talk, but anyway.
You know, I met the Circle. I met them. They opened for
Really?
they opened for Pete Best 2 years ago or last year in Kent.
Really?
I swear.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are The Circle? How many in The Circle? Other than Red Rubber Ball, what was the other hit?
Oh, there was one other one. I can't think of it. It'll come to me during that. 2 hits.
Turn Down Day.
That's it. Yeah.
There you go. I used to work in radio.
I know. I used to listen to you, man. I listen to your show religiously. So there you go.
Let's get back to
Yeah.
Ringo here. Everybody who grew up listening to the Beatles, male or female, had a favorite Beatle. For most of the women, the girls at least, when I was growing up, it was Paul McCartney, some John Lennon, some George Harrison, a couple, I don't know. Yeah, Ringo's kind of cute, but Ringo wasn't the hot guy. It was McCartney was the hot guy. But for the guys, it was different. Well, I like George Harrison's guitar riffs. I like John Lennon's stance on this. And for you, it was Ringo Starr from a very, very young age. And I'm wondering, why Ringo?
That's a good question. You know, I think there was something about him. I mean, you know, I guess it started with the movies, right? He was hilarious in Help and Hard Day's Night with that one scene where he kind of runs away from the Beatles and he's getting into trouble. And then when I was a kid, for Christmas, my mom bought me Help for Christmas when I was 5. Well, Santa brought it, but I'm pretty sure it was my mom.
Santa Mom.
And there was a song on it, Act Naturally, which I thought was that song blew me away, you know, which I know was a Buck Owens song, but I knew it by Ringo and the Beatles. And then later in life, you may remember this, when Ringo put out Sentimental Journey, because the songs are all old, my mom and my dad used to play that album on New Year's Eve and have their own little dance because of all the songs they loved. And there was a big song in our household, or big album they'd play on New Year's Eve, just around midnight. And rather than Lawrence Welk or Guy Lombardo. And I just grew to love Ringo. And through the 70s, he was as big as Elton John or Neil Diamond. He was huge.
Yeah.
He was, I don't know that people remember that or know that.
No, and we want to get in the 70s, my personal favorite in terms of music. But we'll get into that some more as well. So you grow up, Ringo is the guy that you like. And for a lot of people, as the Beatles started to mature and as their audience started maturing with them, they started examining the Beatles a little bit more and came to the conclusion, many of them, that, yeah, these were Lennon and McCartney are brilliant writers. They're all great musicians. Ringo, is he okay drummer? He's not a bad drummer. I guess he's a good drummer. And then later on in life, you start realizing, boy, he was praised by some of the greatest drummers, and even to this day in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Neil Peart of Rush, Heart.
Yeah.
Rush. He listed Ringo as his favorite drummer. And what's the gentleman from the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, who talks about Ringo's drumming. And, you know, I think someone once said Ringo was the perfect drummer for the Beatles because he played to the song, as opposed to, you know, Keith Moon was a great drummer, but, you know, Keith could go kind of wild on the drums. Right?
Yeah.
Ringo only did one drum solo in the entire career of the Beatles, and that's on Abbey Road, and it's 38 seconds. So, you know,
is that in the end?
Yeah, that's right. I can't play anything by you, Ted.
Well, no, yes, you can. Trust me. It doesn't. This game won't last very long if you're trying to run stuff by me. Trust me, Aaron.
I'm not trying.
But you're right, because there was a time like in the 70s when all of a sudden these drum solos started appearing. These rock bands, and the drum solos started appearing, and they would get more and more intense and longer. Musicians would literally leave the stage, leaving the drummer on the stage by himself for like 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes. Into God of Davida, for example. Just go nuts, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw John Candy and Eugene Levy's mockumentary Schmengi Brothers,
I love the schmink.
The Last Polka, which is a parody of The Last Waltz. Well, instead of a drum solo, at one point they turned, all the musicians are playing, and it leaves. They start leaving the stage except for the tuba player. The tuba player goes on for like 3-4 minutes, and then John Candy comes back and goes, "Gibby Glitzky, everybody, Gibby Glitzky, as if you didn't know." My God. So yeah, you're right. So that's why, I guess, maybe why a lot of people never considered Ringo at the outset to be such a great drummer, because he was in the back. All the drummers are in the back, or most of them anyway. But he was there with he was part of the band. He wasn't a guy that came in and had his part and then left. He was
Right.
one
And
of the Fab Four.
he was. And if you listen to something like, say, John Lennon always said, if you want proof that Ringo was the best drummer, listen to Rain. And it's true. If you listen to the song Rain by the Beatles, he does some and Tomorrow Never Knows, Helter Skelter. I mean, he could drum. He just didn't have to be, remember, Yes used to have Alan White. He'd have his 20-minute drum solo. Ringo didn't need that. And he still didn't, even when he went solo. He didn't really ever, if you've ever seen Ringo in the All-Stars, he still doesn't do the big drum solo thing. He just does his thing,
No. And he was also one of a few musicians who could sing and play his instrument at the same time. Lead guitarists, playing the lead, it's easy, right? Playing the drums and singing. Well, first of all, I couldn't play the drums. My bottom half of my top half of my body, they don't exist together.
I know.
But to play the drums and the sing at the same time, I think, back then, I think of Karen Carpenter was one who did. Can't think of a lot more. I know that there are many more, but
Just Phil Collins, really.
Phil Collins, yeah, of course, but not a lot. No. But he did.
And Karen Carpenter was a huge Beatle collector. She admired Ringo's drumming tremendously. She talked about that several times and they did Beatle covers, right? They did Ticket to Ride and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. That's right. Forgot. She was an incredible singer, Karen Carpenter. I saw a piece of the other night. I saw kind of a documentary, and I thought, my God, what a voice! What a voice!
Perfect, just perfect.
I mean, whether you liked her music or not, whether it was too sappy or mainstream for you, that's one thing. But just the voice itself as an instrument, she was incredible.
I'm with you.
So, how old would you have been when the Beatles officially called it quits in 1969?
So I was just shy of being 5 years old. My older brother took me to see Let It Be just after they announced and he bought me, because I was very upset that the Beatles split up, because I thought they were going to stay together forever, and I was only 5. And he bought me the Let It Be album, which came at that time in a big box with a book. It's quite rare now, but I still have the box and the book and everything else.
I'm sure you do. I hope you've got good security at your house, man, because the stuff you got's got to be worth a gazillion dollars. Well, please go ahead.
No, but I was pretty upset when the Beatles split up, because I was just, I'm the youngest of 5 boys, and I had 4 brothers, and our home was very musical. So we had music on all the time, Beatles and country and folk, a lot of Bob Dylan. And the Beatles were very special. Of course, you think, well, they've split up. What are they going to do now? Well, I remember seeing Let It Be, and then about 2 weeks later, getting the McCartney album with him with his daughter in his coat. So I thought, well, okay, maybe we can do this. And then we got Ringo's Sentimental Journey album, which became a standard in our house.
Of all the Beatles, when asked about splitting, the person who took it the worst was Ringo. In fact, was quoted as saying, "The breakup was horrendous."
He lost his brothers. He was an only child, and he said, "My brothers were the Beatles, and I lost my brothers all of a sudden." He still. I saw him interviewed a couple of weeks ago, months ago, and he said, the Beatles they had more years ahead of them. And they did. I don't think today, bands do an album and then they split up for a year or two and then they get back together. But that wasn't the way back, and you know that, right, Ted? Back in the 1970s and 60s, with a band split, they split. They didn't take 2 years off. Who took 2 years off in the 60s? And they just kept pumping out music, right?
Mhm.
But I wish the Beatles had gotten back together again. I think they would have made tremendous music in the 70s and 80s. I think so.
And all the research and everything you've read and everyone you've talked to about the Beatles and specifically about Ringo, did you ever have any what were his thoughts on Pete Best, who he replaced?
He never put down Pete Best's drumming. His thoughts were that Pete was wrong for the Beatles, that Pete had a different sensibility that didn't quite fit what the Beatles wanted to do. And so he never really, and Pete never put Ringo down. Pete just didn't fit in. And if you watch the old clips and you listen to Anthology 1, which has just been reissued, and you listen to Pete drumming Love Me Do, for example, it just doesn't work as well as Ringo's. There's something, it's just a different style, right? He had nothing negative to say about Pete Best. I would love to see the two of them do something together now. It would be great.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
One of the things that I love about the book, and the book is called Ringo Starr's Solo Career, Got to Pay Your Dues. The author, Aaron Badgley, is my guest. One of the things that I really love about the book is it introduced me to a Ringo Starr that I was unaware of. I thought I knew Ringo Starr until I started reading this book, and then I thought, oh, really? Oh, really? Well, that's interesting. Wow, that's cool. That's what. And by the end of it, I thought, this is a totally this is people have to know that this does not encompass his entire life after the Beatles split. This is specifically one decade, the 70s, from 70 to the end of 79 till 1980. It's those years that you talk about, but by the time those years have come to a close, 1980, I walk away from the book thinking, this is a totally different guy. And I listen to a Beatles record now or a Ringo Starr record now, I'm hearing it from a different perspective. And that's what I love about well-written biographies.
That is the hugest compliment I could get. So thank you so much. And that was my goal, Ted, to kind of say that Ringo was more than just an ex-Beatle, and he was more than just, his big hits in the 70s. And I love doing doing the research. There was stuff I found out that I had no idea. Like I stumbled across the fact that he produced 2 films for the famous anthropologist, Dr. Lawrence Blair.
About Indonesia.
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea.
I know. I saw that too, and I double take. What?
Yeah, I did. And I got to talk to Dr. Blair, and we had a great conversation about Ringo. And he said Ringo was great. He just wanted to see the film footage. He didn't care. He was like, "Here's the money. Do what you want, but I want to see what you shoot." And
Yeah.
so it was. So that's a huge compliment. Thank you very much. And but I love doing the research. That's what that to me is the fun part. Writing is great too, but I love digging and finding stuff out. It's fun.
I can tell, man. You're as I call Terry O'Reilly from Under the Influence. Think you know Terry is.
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Another research freak. And he says, yeah, I am, in a nice way, right?
My poor wife, because I went through every issue of Billboard magazine from 1970 to 1980. And I'd find stuff about Ringo, but I'd find other stuff. I go, did you know that, in 1974, Rory Gallagher did, it's like, please.
And she edited the book. That blows me away. How did you stay married, man?
She's great. Her and my daughter, Linda, they both edited it. It's the best feedback I could get from both of them. They're honest, and I need that. I need someone to say, well, this isn't working, or, and of course my wife is so funny because she'd be like, did you learn to spell? Like, did you not use spell check? No, I didn't. I forgot. But they're a very big support, and I couldn't do it without them. And I do. And I know I bore them both sometimes with trivia about Ringo. And I was playing a lot of Ringo Starr for 2 years and 2.5 years. And she put up with that, which is, I appreciate. She's a keeper. After 33 years, I think we're okay.
Yeah, well, good for you. As I mentioned, I love the 70s, and I love the fact that this is all set in the 70s. A big time for Ringo, obviously. Great time for pop and rock music. I mean, I think between 68 and 78, 79 were the best music. I mean, I go to weddings now, and they're my friends' kids, who are in their 40s now, 30s now, are listening. And I'm shocked at how much Beatles music is played and how much music from the 70s is played at these kids' young weddings. And I think the stuff they're listening to right now, the contemporary music today, my grandkids going to be playing it at their wedding?
No.
I doubt it.
No. Fleetwood Mac Rumors is on the charts every day, every week. It's an album that never goes away, right? And you
Yeah.
think about 1971, Ted, like, you think Imagine and Jethro Tull, Tapestry, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell. I mean, it was
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye. And all this stuff has just stayed with us. And I think you're right. Like it's, I look at my daughter who's 26 and she knows all these artists and, her best
Yeah.
friend, big Joni Mitchell fan and thinks Blue is the best thing ever. And she's what, 26, 25?
Hmm.
There's something, it was the craftsmanship of the songs. And there's also, maybe, I mean, this is how I feel, is that the music was very honest. I mean, these guys were not sitting down with people to write hits like they do today. Where, you look at a song on the charts and it has 15 writers because there's all these people that are.
Yeah.
But this was, 2 or 3. Queen. I love that joke about Queen. It took 10 people to write the song for Justin Bieber. It took 4 people to write Bohemian Rhapsody.
So let's go back now to the book here because we can talk.
Oh,
which is okay too. Right? That's fine. So here's Ringo Starr thinking, okay, what am I going to do here? I'm shattered to one degree. Clearly, I'm assuming this. Maybe I shouldn't, but financially, he's not worrying about the future in terms of his finances, and he figures, okay, I'll always be able to get some kind of work. But I got to do more than that because he's still a young man. So most people think, okay, so I'm going to go back into the studio, and here comes a great pop or a rock and roll or something funky kind of music. No, the first album he records is Sentimental Journey.
Yeah.
Sentimental Journey.
Years ahead of Rod Stewart and Linda Ronstadt, and he did it first. Yeah, it's an interesting album. And if you look at the album, who he worked with on the album, Maurice Gibb arranged a song, Paul McCartney arranged a song, George Martin produced the album. But these are songs that were they meant a lot to. And at the cover of the album, where he has his family in the window, his mom and his stepdad and all that. Yeah, that was can you imagine a Beatle putting out an album with Bye Bye Blackbird? Odd choice. Did very well in the UK.
But then again, let me just interrupt here because I remember the Beatles. I remember distinctly driving with my mother and a friend of hers, and the Beatles song "Till There Was You" popped up on the radio.
Yeah,
and I was bragging to my mother and her friend. I said, "See that's the Beatles. That's good music. That's good music." And my mother's friend said to me, "That song is 40 years old. Wasn't it like an old classic, right?" And I shrunk to about this big in the backseat. Went, "Oh, okay."
Well,
so it wasn't. It's not unique that contemporary musicians take old songs and give them a new twist, a more modern twist.
Not at all. And here's a bit of trivia for you. The song "Please Please Me," John Lennon based that on a Bing Crosby song called "Please" because he liked the play on words of "Please hear my pleas." So they were aware of all that stuff. They grew up with it. I mean, they were post-war. Ringo, all that music had a big impact on them. And I don't know if you know this or not, but when the Beatles did their first audition for Decca Records, which they failed, one of the songs they sang was "Bésame Mucho."
I used to play that when I played in the Ukrainian polka band. Honest to God.
Did you really?
Well, how else would I know that song?
That's so cool. Are there any tapes of that?
God, no.
There better be film footage.
No.
So
I don't even think there's an artist sketch on that either. No.
But you're right. This wasn't, but it was an odd choice for Ringo to start his solo career, and then he follows it up with an album of country music, which which did better in Canada than it did anywhere in the world. It did really well.
But you could see that from when he did Act Naturally, because there's a country, that's a country tune. You could see that there was a country singer in him just when he did that, right? They're gonna take me, put me in the movies, right? So that one didn't shock me as much as what I didn't know anything about Sentimental Journey until I read the book, and then I went, "That's Sentimental Journey? What?" But so he finally gets back into the contemporary groove, as it were, and puts out. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say best or it don't come easy. And the funniest part of this, if I can share, I'll begin the story. You finish the story because it's your book. He and George Harrison, he was probably tighter with George Harrison and any other Beatles. Is that fair to say?
100%.
Okay. So George Harrison becomes really close with Ravi Shankar, and they put together this massive concert for Bangladesh, which is a huge success and just does so many wonderful things. And he decides, okay, I'm going to perform. I mean, he plays the drums for a lot of the groups in the song in the film, right? Concert slash film. But he decides I'm going to do It Don't Come Easy. But he hasn't at this point has not been on stage for how many years?
5 years. 5 years.
Okay. So, and you continue.
Well, he forgets the words. I mean, it's just like, it's like, and if you listen to the recording, it's like, you know, and it's hilarious because he just, and what I love about is that they left it on the record.
Yeah.
He just forgot.
Well, he was right. It don't come easy.
The funny thing is that they did 2 concerts that day, and both times he forgot words in the song. So when they asked him which version do you want on the album, he said, well, whichever one's better. Well, you forgot less on this one. Okay, great.
You screwed up less on number 2 than number 1.
Exactly.
Throw in number 2.
Well, and that's where I got the title of my book from. You know, You Got to Pay Your Dues, because I love that song. Don't Come Easy. It's an amazing song that's stood the test of time. You know, I mean, it's.
And I wondered why, you know, after thinking It Don't Come Easy was such a great song and got to pay your dues if you want to sing the blues.
That's right.
Why did you choose that and not the actual title of the song as the subtitle of your book?
Well, that's a good question too, and I was challenged with that, and I said because I felt that if I put the title "It Don't Come Easy," it might have more of a negative connotation as opposed to you got to pay your dues, and you're gonna. If you do that, everything will be fine. And I think I just like the sentiment that Ringo was getting across there, which was, you know, you can't. Nothing in life is. You can't just walk into something. You got to pay your dues one way or the other, and I like that. So that's where the title came from. So. And as I said,
Ringo. I'm sorry. I was just going to say Ringo was you know for many of us still to this day think of Ringo Starr as former Beatle drummer for the Beatles, now solo artist, has put together this all-star band over the years. I mean, God, he's had some of the greatest musicians because the all-star band changes sort of every year, and every time we go to a new concert, let's throw in a Clapton, let's add in this, take out this, and. So, I mean, just the great musicians that he's played with, but there were so many sides to Ringo. In fact, as I started reading the book, I thought, well, is this kind of should this be called this? Not saying that it should change the title of the book, but could it have been called Ringo, the reinvention of Ringo?
Yeah.
Or is it more really the Ringo you didn't know?
I wish I had that word. See, where were you when I was coming up with the title?
I was here.
Okay,
I'm rehabbing.
I'm emailing you before my next book.
I would do that.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, and that was the hope. That was my hope, is that, you know, reading this, I wanted to give depth to his career. I didn't want to get into his private life unless it really applied to what was going on in his music. I just thought he's a fascinating man because, you know, you look at the early 70s, he's playing with B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf, which is cool. And he's playing with, you know, Apple artists. And then he starts working with country artists in the late 70s. And he works with Harry Nilsson on Harry Nilsson's biggest album, which is Nilsson Schmilsson, which is a great album. And Son of Schmilsson. And of course, they made the film together, Son of Dracula, which is enough said. And it's an odd film, an odd movie.
We'll get into the movies in a minute.
But it's. I just wanted to kind of show a depth to Ringo, that there was more to him than. And this is going to sound funny. I wanted to imagine a world where he wasn't in the Beatles and that he was this new artist starting in the 70s. Because you said something earlier, Ted. You said he was a young man. When the Beatles split up, he was 29 years old.
Yeah, well, that's a young man.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine being 29 and you're so what have you done in your life? Well, I was in the Beatles.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you think about it, that's probably what it must have been like for a lot of child actors.
Yes.
Can you think of, I'm just thinking right now, Ronnie Howard, right? I mean, Ronnie Howard could have been forever known as Opie.
Opie.
But now Ron Howard is known for how many great films and how many, you know, I mean, first of all, he continued with Happy Days as an actor, but from then on, it was all behind the camera in so many great films, right?
Plus,
he could have. could have just been known as Opie, and Ringo could have just been known as the guy who played drums for the Beatles. I want to touch on all the different things that he did in his life that people will be aware of to a certain degree, and some maybe not at all. But I want to hit on a couple of songs just to get your impressions, if I can.
Of course.
The song about Back Off Boogaloo, which I love that song,
Me too.
and how the title came to be and how the song came to be, I think is a great story.
Oh, he was good friends with Mark Bolan. And he said in an interview that Mark Bolan used to have a very unique way of talking. And he had Mark Bolan over for dinner. And he didn't just say pass the peas. He'd be like, oh, Boogaloo, pass the peas. oh, Boogaloo, and he just kept throwing this word out. And Ringo thought it was funny. And he went to bed after the dinner. And the song came to him. And he tried to record the song on a little mini tape recorder he had, but he was out of batteries. So he went into his kid's bedroom, took the toys that his kid had, took the batteries out of that, puts it into a tape recorder and sings Back Off Boogaloo. And later, with George's help and a guy named Klaus Voormann, who, of course, did the cover of Revolver, recorded the song Back Off Boogaloo with some great drumming. And people thought that Mark Bolan played guitar in that song, but that's George. That's Harrison doing a very Mark Bolan-esque guitar. Yeah. Great story, and I love that song. It's one of my favorite Ringo songs.
It is. I was picturing this guy sitting there. Hey, Boogaloo, hand me the scotch there. Boogaloo, back off, Boogaloo. Get that thing stuck in your head, right? It's like like an earworm, right? The song "Photograph." He co-wrote that with George Harrison for the most part, right?
Yeah. Well, that actually got started when they started writing that when they were recording Kamisi. And the funny story about that is I was interviewed a guy by the name of Bill Schneid, and who engineered Ringo and Goodnight Vienna, and he worked very closely with Richard Perry. And when George and Ringo brought in Photograph to do the song, it was very slow and it was very sad. And Richard Perry goes, yeah, the lyrics are sad, but we can make this a pop hit. And they picked the tempo up and that great orchestration in the beginning,
Yeah.
But that was written by George, and Ringo always says that it was really about the breakup of his marriage to Maureen, but later on, after George passed away, it became more about George. And whenever you see him in concert, he dedicates it to George, which is quite touching. So,
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
I've had the great fortune to say that I've been associated with one of Toronto's finest names in men's clothing for more than 25 years. Tom's Place. Founded by Tom Mahalick's father in 1958, Tom's Place offers brand name men's apparel at unbeatable prices. But more than that, they boast a long-serving, knowledgeable, and friendly staff that can assist you whether you're looking for casual or formal attire. And they have plenty of first-class tailors on site. In addition, Tom and his family are well known for their philanthropic work. So if you're looking to deal with great people who can fulfill your clothing desires at outstanding prices, do yourself a favor and visit Tom's Place. They're open weekdays from 11 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and Sundays noon to 5. You'll find Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Or check them out online at toms-place.com. Tom's Place will suit you.
Now back to Ted Woloshyn.
So since you brought it up, I wanted to touch on his marriage to Maureen, which unfortunately it didn't last. But he's one of those guys, and there's not that many. There are perhaps more, hopefully more now than ever, marriages that when they fail, people still actually do manage to stay friends and continue with a relationship and decency and respect and love towards each other to certain degrees. And that was the story with him and Maureen. They wasn't one of these ugly War the Roses deals.
No.
And they remained.
Yeah. And in fact, he bought the house next door to give to Maureen so he could live next door to her and the kids. And she went off and she married the guy who started Hard Rock Cafe. But they stayed good friends. And there's a funny story, which I thought was funny, was there's a group by the name of Stormer, who were recording in Ringo's home studio, because Ringo's house, which he bought from John, had a studio. And Maureen would come over and help these musicians cook their breakfast because Ringo wouldn't hire her.
Yeah.
But Maureen would come over and help. That was just really sweet, and she didn't need to do that, but they stayed good friends. And even Paul McCartney wrote a song when she passed away called Little Willow on his Flaming Pie album, which was about Maureen. And it's Yeah, I don't think Ringo really, even talking to his ex-fiancée, Nancy Lee Andrews, she's like, no, we broke up, but it wasn't because either one of us hate each other. It just wasn't working, and we knew it. So
And talk about John paying tribute to her. What about Frank?
yes, Maureen is a champ. Lady is a champ.
Yeah.
First record on Apple. Which can you
Yeah, that I found really cool.
Yeah.
First recording on Apple is Frank Sinatra.
doing The Lady is a Champ instead of a tramp? Can you imagine for your wife to, Ted just saying, well, I'm going to give a call to someone and, hey, Frank, can you re-record this song for me in full orchestration
Yeah.
and just change the
Yeah.
words? And he did it.
Yeah, sure.
Sinatra did it. So, yeah, I mean, it's great stories, right?
The No-No song, which is a song about just giving up everything bad, drugs, alcohol, whatever, comes from a personal problem, personal situation.
So it does. And Ringo actually didn't write. That was one of the few he didn't write. It was written by
Yeah,
Hoyt Axton, who's
right.
okay. Do the trivia.
A great country writer, right?
And his mother wrote Heartbreak Hotel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, May Axton.
You just have way too much knowledge for one human being.
My boss used to say, Aaron, if you applied to work what you do to the Beatles, you'd be like a manager. Well, I got to talk to Hoyt Axton's son about the song, and Hoyt wrote it for Ringo because I was trying to give up all the drink and the drugs and all that kind of stuff. And it is, and yet it's quite a funny little song. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the film clip of him doing it with the Smothers Brothers, but it's actually quite funny, But
no,
yeah, look it up on YouTube. It's amusing. But it's a hard song not to like. And you mentioned earworm. That's an earworm. That song, that gets in.
Oh, yeah.
Just goes around and around and around, making a mess of my hair. It's a great song, and it was deserved. It made #1 in Canada. Follow the charts closely.
The home of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
There you go, Canada. We know rehab. Now, did he have? Was he really bogged down from alcohol and drugs? Was it a major problem for him, or was it sort of this is not good, I got to get out of this?
It became a major problem in the 90s. It wasn't. He recognized. He made a comment. He said, "I stopped being a musician who drank and became an alcoholic who did music," and that's why he kind of cleaned up in the 70s. But then when the 80s hit, after John, he really slipped into some not so healthy behaviors, drugs, alcohol, and things like that. But then the second time he got clean, which was 88, I mean, he's been clean since. And, the start of the Ringo and the All-Stars, and his career really picked up. I mean, it was a problem, but he knew it, and he didn't want it. He never did hard drugs. He wasn't doing the hard. He drank. He liked to drink. That was his choice, drink,
Mm-hmm.
But
so now let's talk about Ringo, the movie star. We all knew as a young kid, as you followed the Beatles, you knew that he had some ability on the screen because we saw that first with Hard Day's Night, followed by Help. And really, when you look back and now, and again, I guess I didn't grab onto that. I wasn't smart enough to figure that out then, and probably not even now. But since you brought it up in your book, I am now. That in fact, he was really the star of most of those movies.
Yeah, he was the focus on both of them, and
yeah,
who knew? I mean, he was the youngest Beatle too, the newest Beatle, but he did it so well. I mean, his expressions in Help sometimes. The one scene that rings in my mind is when he's in the trunk of the car and he's being kidnapped, and George opens the trunk and he just has this expression of hello, natural. It's one of the funniest scenes. And of course, the infamous scene in A Hard Day's Night when he's walking and there's the pretty girl and he's putting his coat down over the mud, and then she goes right down into the manhole cover.
One of the things about the movies, and this isn't specifically about Ringo, and I can't remember which of the Beatles films was, I thought was the coolest, is when they all walk into their separate homes, and you realize it's one big home. Like it looks like four townhouses next to each other, but there's no walls separating it. They all have a separate door, but it's one big home. And I thought, wow, that's really cool.
That's in the movie Help, and I wanted to have John Lennon's bed because his bed was in the floor and he had the bookshelf around him, and he's lying. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. Yeah, that's a great scene, isn't it? It's so funny.
Those movies led to other movies. Magic Christian comes to mind. Raquel Welch used to come to mind quite often, actually, as a younger man. But that's a different story. Your thoughts on the Magic Christian?
I love the Magic Christian. It's one of the funniest films, and I think it's under Peter Sellers is so good in that film, and so is Ringo. I don't know. There's a scene in the film where Ringo is doing face yoga, and it's just so ludicrous that if you can watch it and not giggle, I don't know if you've got a pulse, because it's, Ringo's doing these facial stretches, and it's and Sellers loved the film, and so did Ringo, and it had a great soundtrack. Thunderclap Newman, Badfinger. That's where the hit "Come and Get It" came from.
Mm-hmm.
Great film, and it was a great way to start his film career, because it was Christopher Lee as Dracula for a brief second in the film. Great movie. I love it. I still watch it. I'll have people come over for dinner, and I'll go, "You've not seen The Magic Christian? Well, after dinner, we're going to watch The Magic Christian."
There you go. And for a younger generation, he was Thomas the Tank.
Thomas the Tank Engine,
which was shot here, or at least the voice.
No,
he was here in Toronto, right?
Yeah, that was shot in studios in Scarborough, where they filmed. You mentioned the Schmengi brothers, where they filmed SCTV. It was where they filmed Thomas the Tank Engine. Just believe me, I tried to get in several times, but that's another story. I'm not a stalker, but I did want to meet Ringo.
Did you ever meet Ringo?
I got to meet him twice, three times, three different press conferences, and I was allowed to ask him a couple of questions. The funny story about meeting Ringo is this: I asked him a question that he really liked, because I didn't ask him about the Beatles. I asked him about something else, and he goes, "Oh, do you have a camera? Do you want to get a shot?" And I said, "Yeah." I had those little point and click cameras back in the early '90s, late '90s, and if you look at the photos I took, they're just blurs, because I couldn't stop shaking.
Nerves?
Sure, Ringo. Lovely. When I talked to him, he was very funny. And I asked him about an album of his, Buku Blues. And I said, I'm just curious as to why you never do any songs off that album. And he stopped. He goes, "I love that album, but no one else did."
And that was recorded, I believe, in Nashville, right?
It was, yeah.
Before sort of Nashville became the hot spot for all kinds. Nashville at one point was just a place for country music. Now it's everybody flocks to Nashville. Everybody.
And can I tell you a really quick funny story about that? It recorded.
Yeah, of course.
Now you used to be a disc jockey. You were on the radio, and you remember records, especially Beatle records. Always said recorded in England on the label. Remember that?
Yep.
So when they pressed up the Buku Blues, it says in recorded in Nashville. It says recorded in England. Ringo's like, no, we got to fix that. So I got the very first pressing of the album just by chance, where it says recorded in England on it. Later it was fixed to reflect that it was recorded in Nashville. But
really,
someone wasn't paying attention, but I was.
So what was the question that you asked Ringo that was not about the Beatles that impressed him or warmed up to him? Warmed him up to you?
I asked him what was on his iPod. What was he digging?
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he said, "Well, Aaron, I've got 8 iPods. I have one that's the 60s, one that's the 70s." and he talked about music with me for a few minutes, because he was like, he asked me, "So have you heard of a group called the Handsome Family? I'm very much into their music right now." And I said, "No." And he told me about the group, and he said he was listening, and he was just talking about, he seemed more comfortable talking about other music. He didn't really want to talk about him or the Beatles. He liked talking about the All-Stars, and he was certainly very complimentary to Edgar Winter, and who was great, who made me laugh. So he's such a wacky guy. Can I say wacky? Is it still a word?
Yes, you can say groovy if you want.
All right.
Why not? Far out, man.
Well, those are
if I had a chance to ask Ringo a question, because it's the kind of guy I am, I would say, especially if it was in public, I'd say, let me ask you a question. Favorite group, Stones or Dave Clark 5?
Oh my gosh, that would have been a great question.
Just because there's no way you would have ever been asked that question.
No, and I would love to know the answer.
Yeah.
I think he might say the Stones, because he was good.
How many times does that question come up? Stones, Beatles, Beatles, Stones, Beatles or Stones? Are you a Stones guy or are you a Beatles guy?
That was huge in the 70s, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you talk about the musicians that he worked with. I mean, these huge, huge names were always willing to come work with him because they liked him, they admired him, they respected him. But he also had a real passion for up and coming musicians. He wanted to help them. He wanted to nurture them. He thought it was important to do that. And really, that was the genesis for the birth of Ringo Records. Was it
right.
not?
100%. That was just to help young musicians that unlike Harrison's Dark Horse, he didn't know any of these people that were on Ringo Records. They were all people that sent in tapes and auditioned. I interviewed several artists who were on Ringo Records. One who became quite famous, a guy named Graham Bonnet, who later became the lead singer of Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. But they all had the same stories about Ringo, that he was very encouraging. He loved to hear what they were doing. The funny story was there was a guy named Colonel Doug Bogey who put out one single. And he brought Ringo this really elaborate album. He had recorded a concept album about outer space and stuff. And at the very end of the album, he, as a joke, did a synthesizer version of Away in the Manger. And Ringo said, well, I don't care for the album, but that song, that's the single. That's what put it out. But he did. He wanted
Colonel Bogey. Isn't there a song called Colonel Bogey?
Yes.
There is, isn't
Yes,
there?
sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew you'd know that, Ted.
I don't know why I know that. I know things that I shouldn't know, and things that I should know, I don't know, you know?
But
Ringo Records, a lot of people said, well, this is just kind of a rich guy with a little hobby. It's like a hobby farm off to the side somewhere. But he was really quite passionate about it.
He was. And there's a lot of good music. And he was very passionate, and he promoted the artists. The very first album that people might be interested in is an album called Startling Music, which is an all synthesizer version. Now, this is back in 74, okay? So this is before synths took off. A synthesizer version of his Ringo album, and it features a certain Phil Collins on drums, and kind of a cool album. And Ringo plays finger clicks on one track. Again, why do I read these covers very carefully.
What are finger clicks?
You know when you have...
What do you mean?
You like
little castanets?
Yes, yeah.
That kind of thing?
Exactly.
Oh, good. So he hasn't, at 85, his arthritis hasn't hit him yet?
No, it has me.
Or that was back then, I think.
Yeah, that was back then.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
It was an interesting label. There was another artist on the label, a guy named Rab Noakes, who was a Scottish folk singer who performed and used to write and sing with Jerry Rafferty, and who went on to perform with Jerry Rafferty, not at that point. So it was a very interesting label. And sadly, it didn't last for lots of reasons, maybe financial, but he took it very seriously. It wasn't just a tax write-off or I don't really care about this. He cared passionately for these artists. He really wanted them to do well.
Yeah. Not the last thing that I want to talk about, but the thing that really stuck out to me that it's one of the, and I love this when this happens to me. And I'm sure that you must love this as a researcher when you're reading and you dig up something, you go, what?
Yeah.
And you got to go back and double check it, triple check it. And I can ask you give me a couple examples of those for you. For me as a writer was when I went, and he owned a high-end furniture company store. What? What do you mean he owned a furniture store? They built furniture and he sold high-end furniture.
Yeah.
How the hell did he get into that?
Well, the funny story is that so they hired a guy, Robin Cruikshank, to do the Apple offices in 69, and Ringo liked his stuff. But Ringo was he's one of those guys who doesn't like to throw things out. He would make things out of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Made this really weird gizmo and showed it to Robin, and Robin said, hey, that's cool. Ringo's biggest thing he made was a coffee table made out of the front of a Rolls Royce, a grill from a Rolls Royce.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I thought so.
Yeah.
So they went into business together, and he actually designed. He would do these different tables, different decorative boxes.
Yeah.
Do all sorts of things. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect of his creativity that he would, that was, and when I started doing a deep dive into that, there was a lot of like, wow, I just thought he might have financed it. No. He was in there designing furniture and helping out and painting and cutting and all that stuff. So interesting time.
And the office for Ringo Records, was it not on top of a Rolls Royce dealership?
Wow, you remember that? That's cool, Ted. And no one could find it. There was just a little sign on top of there's like the Rolls Royce, and then there was like, Ringo Records.
And we should point as Ring, R-I-N-G, yeah, capital R, small R-I-N-G, capital O, apostrophe Records, as though it was an Irish organization. Ringo Records.
Ringo Records.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like
I think two
yeah.
with a lilt. Well, they got to go to, Ringo Records. But it was above the.
Did he discover? Were there any hits from Ringo Records? Anybody break through courtesy of Ringo Records?
Not here, but Graham Bonnet had a #1 hit single with a song called "Warm Ride" that was written by the Bee Gees. That was a leftover track from Saturday Night Fever. That Ringo was friends with Maurice Gibb and said, "Do you have anything?" And he, well, you have this song. The song made #1 in Australia, and it made #1 in a number of countries in Europe. But over here, it didn't do anything. And I don't know. It's very. I mean, if I played it for you, you'd be like, "That should have been a hit," because it's pretty disco and pop. But so no one really made it. I mean, that you would know, but other people made it in behind the scenes. Carl Grossman, a few others. But then there wasn't like Apple where you had the Badfingers and the Mary Hopkins and the James Taylor. It was pretty small time, but it was a fun label, and it's been fun to collect. Let me tell you. Oh, Bobby Keys from the Rolling Stones, the saxophonist from the Stones in the 70s, put out a single. And it was like a average white bandish kind of a song, instrumental, sax, and kind of a good dance beat. Oh.
How many albums did Ringo record? Has Ringo recorded to this date outside the Beatles? As Ringo Starr, not on other people's albums, but
Right.
as his own.
He's done 18 studio albums, and he's done 6 live Ringo and the All-Stars. So not bad.
Wow.
Not bad. I mean,
And you have how many copies of each?
Well, depending on the album.
I'm saying this, hoping that your wife's listening and going, oh, God, he's lying. There's way more than that.
Yeah, my favorite question was they just reissued the albums on colored vinyl, 4 of his albums.
No.
And she said, "You have this album." I said, "But not on green." You see what the problem is there, honey.
I know. But I know what you're saying. If you're so deeply immersed into someone's careers or an individual or a group, and you collect, you gotta. Otherwise, you're not really you're a small C collector. You're not a capital C collector.
Thank you. Can you send me an email and explain?
No, God, don't get me into this. But I understand though. I understand.
He had his.
It's like when you think about it, and I don't want to distract too much from this, but when you think about it, what's happening right now I'm a big NFL fan. Well, they keep bringing out these retro jerseys. Okay, this is what the Packers wore in 71. This is what they wore in 39. And people say, why are they doing this? I said, what do you mean, why are they doing this? Because every time they bring one of those out, they get to sell one. So that if you're a real Packers fan, you've got every one of those jerseys that they've ever played in. And the one that, there were tribute to this owner and one that was at the end. So it never ends.
No, it never ends. And did you watch the Hallmark film about Christmas with the Buffalo Bills?
I haven't seen that yet. No,
it's actually quite good. You might enjoy it. I like it.
Well, I look forward to that. Yeah, I like.
But Ringo had his first ever #1 album this year. His album "Look Up" made #1 on the country charts, and he's selling more records than ever before. I think that it's a good year that he's being reevaluated, and not that my book has. I just hope that people can use my book to kind of say, yeah, the guy had some talent, and he still does. I think he's still a vibrant, fascinating artist. So I'm a huge.
I love the fact that he's 85 years old. He's still playing. It's like Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney's 83 years old, just finished playing in Hamilton, just outside of Toronto. And did you see the show?
I did.
I heard it was just nothing short of spectacular.
I can't think of another word. It was, and he sounded great. And I thought he stood there for 3 hours, never had a sip of water, never took a break. I mean, he played nonstop. He was amazing. Ringo just announced a tour for next year. He's going to be 86. He's just announced a new All-Star tour.
Wow. Well, what amazed me about McCartney was the fact that he's still up and performing, considering he died like 60 years ago.
He did 1960. 66. He died in 66. You're right. 60 years ago.
There you go. The book is called Ringo Starr Solo Career. Got to Pay Your Dues, written by Aaron Badgley. Brilliantly put together. I mean, the research is stunning. Boy, do you know your stuff. I mean, you must have gone through every trade magazine, every publication humanly possible, because you got dates when songs were recorded, what position they were in Britain, what position they landed on Billboard, what position they landed here in RPM on the Canadian charts. It's so thoroughly researched. It's just
Thank you.
it's a fascinating read. And I thank you so much, my friend,
Thank you.
for joining me again. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I anytime I'm here, I love talking with you.
What's the next one?
The next one is a book on a Toronto band called Klaatu, that everyone thought was the Beatles.
Weren't they the Beatles?
Well, after Paul was resurrected, he joined Klaatu.
But that was the rumor when Klaatu came out. They recorded it because there was I don't think there's any credits on the album or something like that.
It just said written, produced by Klaatu, and there was no photos, nothing. So yeah, my next book, I'm hoping to have it done early next year, April-ish, springtime. I'm halfway through the first drafts.
We shall talk then.
I hope so.
If not before.
Well, I have to email you for a title.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about that.
Okay.
Aaron Badgley, all the best to you. The book is available wherever fine books are, and you can go. You got a website; people can go there as well, because they can pick up the Dark Horse Records book as well about George Harrison's record album as well, right? So it's aaronbadgley.com.
It's aaron-badgley.com, because someone
Badgley
scooped up the Aaron Badgley, so it's Aaron-Badgley. So, yep.
Okay. You can, if you want it, you'll look it up and you'll find it. And we thank you for looking us up and finding us. And thanks to Tom Mahalik and Tom's Place for his great financial support. They're at 190 Baldwin 7 days a week with the best in men's clothing at unbelievable prices. Tom's Place will suit you. Thanks to Paul Gadd, our technical production. Thanks to you for listening. Don't forget, while you're on your computer, check out our website to www.tedwalshin.ca. Past episodes are available, including the interview with Aaron regarding his book, Dark Horse Records, the short story of George Harrison. Post-Beatles Records Label. It's also up for another award for the longest book title ever. You'll find that. Leave us a question, a comment, and subscribe. It's absolutely free. And most importantly, if you can, fill out your organ and tissue donation card. You could change or even save a life. In the meantime, have a great week. Take care, Aaron.
And you too. Thank you.
Could have worn another shirt.